In the affluent neighborhood of Newport, Rhode Island, Claire Davenport lived with her husband Julian. The white mansion, built on a hill overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, had been purchased with a fortune that Claire's grandfather had built through his oil business. Claire had spent most of her time alone in this house since childhood. Claire's family, the Beaumonts, were known as one of Rhode Island's wealthiest families. The oil-related business that her grandfather, Charles Beaumont, had built from scratch had been expanded by her father, Henry, the third generation, into real estate investment and financial services. Claire was born as an only daughter, and from childhood, it was predetermined that she would inherit the family's enormous fortune. However, the conditions for inheritance set by her father were strict. Maintaining the marriage and protecting the family's honor were absolute requirements. 4 years ago, Claire married Julian Davenport, who ran an investment company. Julian was an ambitious businessman who charmed many people with his handsome features and sophisticated speaking skills. In the early days of their marriage, Claire was attracted to his passion and intelligence. Julian, in turn, showed strong interest in Claire's beauty and, above all, the enormous wealth that her family possessed. A year after their marriage, Leo was born to them. He was a beautiful boy with golden hair and blue eyes. For Claire, Leo was the first person in her life whom she could love wholeheartedly. Having sensed from childhood that the adults around her were interested in her wealth, Claire found deep comfort in Leo's pure affection. The 6 years after her son was born were the happiest period of Claire's life. Julian also seemed to dote on Leo. On weekends, the family would go out on their yacht and enjoy the blue waters of the Atlantic. Leo loved the water and wanted to hold the yacht's steering wheel with his small hands. Julian would stroke his son's head and promise that in the future, they would travel the world together on a big yacht. However, everything changed 2 years ago in the summer. On the day when the family of 3 went out on the yacht, they were caught in a sudden storm. According to Julian's explanation, Leo fell from the deck into the sea and was swept away by the violent waves. The search team looked for his small body in the ocean for days, but it was never found. The police processed it as an accident, and Leo was declared dead after being reported missing. From that day on, Julian never shed a single tear. He calmly proceeded with the funeral preparations and showed no change in expression, even in front of the altar decorated with Leo's small photograph, while Claire collapsed in tears. In the middle of the night, Julian quietly checked his work emails beside her. "Stop clinging to a dead child," Julian said in a cold voice when Claire was crying while hugging her son's clothes in Leo's room. "People must move forward. Leo is gone. It's not good for you to remain trapped in the past forever." Claire was shocked by her husband's words. Only a few weeks had passed since the accident. Could the sadness of losing a son she had spent every day with for 6 years disappear so easily? Julian returned to his usual work the month after the accident and began traveling more frequently than before. His business trips to Texas and Chicago increased, and the time he spent at home clearly decreased. Even when Claire complained about her loneliness, Julian explained it was for business expansion. "Why don't you start something new yourself? Charity work or a hobby? Staying home alone will only make you sadder." Julian's suggestions sounded rational, but it didn't resonate with Claire's heart. What she sought wasn't new activities, but her husband's warm support. However, for Julian, Leo's death seemed to be merely an obstacle to overcome. Claire began visiting Leo's grave in the quiet cemetery on the hill every day. The small headstone was engraved with beloved son, Leo Davenport. Claire brought blue roses, which were her son's favorite, and spoke quietly to the headstone. "Leo, Mama is here again today. I will never forget you. Never." Even the cemetery caretaker, Mr. Peterson, began to worry about Claire's daily visits. However, for Claire, this quiet time was the only precious moment when she could feel connected to her son. 8 months had passed since Leo's death. Claire's daily visits to the grave had now become the center of her life. She would wake up at 7 in the morning, have a light breakfast, then go to the flower shop to buy blue roses. She would spend the morning in the hilltop cemetery and return home in the early afternoon. This routine was the only thing that gave Claire a sense of being alive. Julian continued to be absorbed in his work as always. He would leave for the company early in the morning and return home late at night. The frequency of his business trips increased even more, and he continued to spend less than half the month at home. Even when Claire prepared dinner waiting for her husband's return, she would receive a message saying, "Please eat first. Most of the time, I'll be late tonight. There's an important meeting for the Texas project." Julian's text messages were always brief and cold. Claire would sit alone at the dining table and eat quietly. This time, which used to be spent joyfully with a family of 3, had now become the most painful moment of all. One night, Claire gathered courage and spoke to Julian. "Lately, I hardly have any opportunity to talk with you. Couldn't we discuss Leo a little more?" Julian answered without looking up from his documents. "There's nothing to discuss about Leo. He's dead. That's the reality. But we're a couple who lost our son together. Don't we need each other's support?" At that moment, Julian finally looked up. Clear irritation was visible in his eyes. "Claire, enough already. You go to the cemetery every day, clinging to a dead child. What do you think that will change? Leo won't come back. Accept reality." Claire felt her chest tighten at her husband's cold words. "Leo is our son. He's a precious child we spent every day with for 6 years. Even if you tell me to forget, a mother can't do such a thing. I'm not telling you to forget, but stop clinging to a dead child. Your behavior is unhealthy. You should consider receiving counseling." Julian's words left deep wounds in Claire's heart. She hadn't realized how painful it would be to have her love for her son called unhealthy. From that night on, the rift between the couple deepened further. Julian shortened his time at home even more than before and began avoiding conversations with Claire. Meanwhile, Claire gave up on having her husband understand her feelings and clung even more to Leo's memories. To dispel her loneliness, Claire decided to start using social media. She created an Instagram account called With Love for Leo and began posting photos of her cemetery visits and memories with her son. "I came to see Leo again today. Blue roses were your favorite color, weren't they? I think about you every day." Along with a photo of blue roses placed in front of the headstone, Claire wrote a message of love to her son. The posts gradually gained followers and warm comments came from other mothers who had similarly lost children. For the first time, Claire felt she had met people who understood her feelings. "Leo, today I brought the picture you drew in kindergarten. It's the dinosaur picture you loved so much. Do you remember? My son, today was your birthday. You would have turned 7. Mama wanted to make a cake and celebrate with you." Claire's posts gradually began attracting attention. A local newspaper even requested an interview. However, this activity would provoke Julian's anger. "Claire, what are you doing?" One night, Julian was furious, holding Claire's smartphone in his hand. "Posting private family matters on social media is outrageous. Stop it immediately. I'm only posting about my son. What's wrong with that? Have you ever thought about our family's reputation? This could cause trouble for your father's company too. Continuing to talk about a dead child in public is abnormal." Julian's words had a coldness that Claire had never felt before. "Leo isn't a dead child. He's our beloved son." "It's the same thing. Enough already. What you need is to see a doctor. I'll make an appointment with a psychiatrist tomorrow." Claire was appalled by her husband's words. Why should continuing to love her son be treated as a mental illness? "Have you ever shed a tear for Leo? Have you ever missed our son, even once?" Julian answered coldly, "Being emotional and dealing with things realistically are different. I'm a realist. I'm different from people who can't move forward because they're trapped in the past." That night, Claire shut herself in the bedroom alone. Her husband didn't come to her. He had taken to sleeping on the study sofa more often. The next morning, Julian began packing early. "Another business trip. I'll be away for about 2 weeks for projects in Chicago and Texas. You should take time to think quietly by yourself." 2 weeks? There are several important contracts. Without income, we can't maintain this house either, Julian explained matter-of-factly. But Claire felt as if her husband was running away from her. "Don't we need to talk about our marriage? Work is the priority right now. We'll think about it when I get back," Julian said, and left the house with a large suitcase. Claire saw her husband's car drive away from the entrance. Lately, Julian seemed like a completely different person. The warmth from the early days of their marriage had been completely lost, and he no longer even treated Claire as a human being. Alone, Claire cried out loud for the first time in a while. The sadness of losing her son, the loneliness of not being understood by her husband, and the despair about her situation all overwhelmed her at once. "Leo, what should Mama do? Papa says to forget about you, but Mama can't do that. You're alive in my heart." That day, too, Claire went to the cemetery. In front of her son's headstone, she spoke quietly, as always. A week had passed since Julian left for his business trip to Texas. Claire continued to visit the cemetery every day as before. The cemetery, wrapped in mourning silence, was the only place where she could find peace of mind. She rarely encountered other visitors, and the only sound was Mr. Peterson, the caretaker, mowing the lawn in the distance. That day was mid-October, a calm afternoon typical of a Rhode Island autumn. Claire sat down in front of Leo's small headstone as usual, carrying a bouquet of blue roses. The headstone was made of white marble and beautifully engraved with her son's name in simple, yet elegant lettering. Claire rearranged the flowers in the vase and carefully wiped the headstone clean. "Leo, Mama came again today." Claire began speaking to her son in a small voice. This time was the most precious moment for her. "Today, I made chocolate chip cookies that you loved. Do you remember? On Saturday afternoons, we made them together in the kitchen. You were so good at kneading the dough with your little hands." Claire took cookies from a small bag she had brought and placed them in front of the headstone. "Papa went on another business trip. Lately, he's really been home so little. But Mama will never forget about you. Every day I think about you." The wind from the Atlantic gently swayed Claire's hair. Old oak trees stood around the cemetery, and the afternoon sunlight streaming through them warmly illuminated the headstone. Claire quietly shed tears while tracing memories of when her son was still small. "I remember when you were born, as if it were yesterday. You were so small, but such a beautiful baby. When you first said Mama, how happy Mama was." Claire placed her hand on the headstone and gently stroked it as if she were petting her son's head. "When you started walking, your first step was toward Mama. Watching you laugh and get back up no matter how many times you fell, Mama was amazed by your strength." The wind grew a little stronger, and the surrounding trees rustled. Claire put the blanket she had brought over her knees and continued her conversation with her son. "At the kindergarten recital, you played the role of a little prince. You looked like you were about to cry from nervousness, but when you found Mama's face, you smiled. Your smile at that moment is still shining in Mama's heart." Claire took out a photo of her son and propped it against the headstone. It was taken on his 6th birthday, showing Leo standing in front of a cake with a big smile. "You were such a kind child. You treasured small animals and flowers, and whenever someone was in trouble, you always tried to help them. Mama is proud of you." Forgetting the passage of time, Claire continued expressing her feelings to her son. The sun began to set in the west, and evening silence visited the cemetery. No other visitors were visible, and Mr. Peterson, the caretaker, seemed to have gone home too. "I love you, Leo. Mama will never forget you. No matter what happens, you continue to live in Mama's heart." Claire pressed her forehead against the headstone and offered a deep prayer. She wished for her son to be at peace and for them to meet again someday. It was then, "Mama." A small, trembling voice came from behind her. Claire's heart began beating violently. It was unmistakably her beloved son's voice. But such a thing was impossible. Leo had died 2 years ago. Claire tried to convince herself it was a hallucination. "Mama." Again, the same voice was heard, this time more clearly than before. Claire's whole body began to tremble. Slowly, fearfully, she turned around. Standing there was definitely Leo. However, it wasn't the 6-year-old son she remembered. Before her eyes stood an 8-year-old boy who had grown during the 2 years. His height had clearly increased, and his features had become a little more mature. But that golden hair and blue eyes, and that gentle smile, were unmistakably Leo's. "Leo," Claire's voice was trembling. Was this a dream or reality? Her son nodded slightly while shedding tears. Mama, it's me. It's Leo. Claire tried to stand up, but her legs had no strength. Her son ran to her first and jumped into Claire's arms. At that moment, Claire felt her son's warmth. This wasn't a hallucination. Her son was definitely there. Leo. Leo, is it really you? Claire gazed at her son's face with disbelief while holding him tight. Mama, I wanted to see you for so long. But Papa. Leo began speaking in broken sentences while crying. Papa took me away, and he said you had died. Claire's world changed in an instant. Her son was alive. For 2 years, while she had been visiting the grave every day, her son had been alive. Mama isn't dead. Mama has been here all along. Claire stroked her son's head while trying to understand the situation with her confused mind. Where's Papa? Where have you been? I was in Texas with a woman named Sophia. But I was called Noah. I was told I mustn't say my real name. Anger and confusion swirled in Claire's heart. Had Julian taken their son away and been deceiving her? But how did you get here? I escaped when Sophia went out. I wanted to see Mama for so long, so long. Leo continued crying with his face buried in his mother's chest. Mama, I don't want to be alone anymore. I want to be with Mama. Claire held her son tightly, as if to fill the 2-year gap. She felt her son's grown body. Something unbelievable was happening, but it was undeniably real. It's okay, Leo. Everything's okay now. Mama is here. In the cemetery bathed in golden sunset light, mother and son quietly embraced each other. Claire brought her son home. Leo wouldn't let go of his mother's hand as if to fill the 2 years of separation. Sitting on the living room sofa, Claire continued listening to her son's story. Mama, I was really confused. Leo was cuddling on his mother's lap like a small child. Though her 8-year-old son had grown bigger than before, to Claire, he was always her beloved child. I remember that day when I went on the yacht with Papa. Suddenly, Papa picked me up and put me in a small boat. There was no storm. The sea was calm. Anger rose in Claire's heart. The accident story that Julian had explained to the police was all lies. Then we arrived at a different port. Papa said, "A new life is starting now." And he said, "Mama got sick and died." Sick and died. Papa said, "Mama loved you, but she got a very sad illness and died. So from now on, you'll live with Papa and a new family." Claire held her son while beginning to understand the full scope of her husband's terrible plan. What kind of life did you have in Texas? There was a woman named Sophia. Papa told me to call her new Mama, but I didn't want to. Sophia was kind, but she wasn't my real Mama. Leo continued while wiping his tears. My name was changed to Noah too. I was told many times that I mustn't say my real name. If I told anyone my real name, they threatened that Mama's grave would be destroyed. Claire's chest tightened. Had he made such terrible threats to a 6-year-old child? What about school? I went to a local elementary school, but all the documents said Noah Williams. Papa kept telling me, "Forget your past. Start a new life." What kind of person was this woman, Sophia? She was a nurse. It seemed like Papa had known her for a long time. She was kind to me, but she seemed somehow sad. Claire listened to her son's story while thinking about Julian's motives. Why had it been necessary to take their son away, and why had he lied to her that Leo was dead? Mama, I wanted to see you all along. I cried alone at night. I miss my real Mama. How were you able to come here, all by yourself? When Papa came back to Texas, Sophia drove him to the airport. But when Sophia went shopping, I left the house. I took a bus with money I had hidden and then got on a plane. An 8-year-old child alone? Papa always taught me how to buy tickets when we traveled. I'm smart, so I remembered. While impressed by Leo's cleverness, Claire's heart ached that her son had to make such a dangerous journey alone. But how did you know I would be at this cemetery? I looked you up on Sophia's computer. I saw on Instagram that you came to the cemetery every day. I knew you brought flowers for me too. Claire was startled. Her social media posts had been a clue for her son. Perhaps Julian's demand to stop using social media had other reasons. The next day, after hiding her son in a safe place, Claire began investigating Julian's actions. First, she checked his company's financial records. Since Julian had left the household financial management to Claire, she had access to the company accounts. Upon investigation, she found that business trip expenses to Texas over the past 2 years had been abnormally high. Moreover, many of these were processed as personal expenses. Furthermore, she discovered mortgage payments for a residence near Austin. Julian had purchased a house in Texas. Claire hired a private investigator and requested a more detailed investigation. 3 days later, she received a shocking report from Detective Mr. Evans. "Mrs. Davenport, your husband has been in a relationship with a woman named Sophia Miller for the past 3 years. He even has an official marriage certificate with her. It's bigamy." Bigamy?
Yes.
According to Texas state records, Julian Davenport and Sophia Miller were married a year and a half ago. Your son is legally registered as their adopted child. All the mysteries were being solved in Claire's mind. Furthermore, upon investigation, your husband has been accessing your son's trust fund. Most of the $500,000 in educational funds set up in Leo's name has already been withdrawn. Trust fund? Yes, the fund my father set up for Leo. Normally, it can't be touched until age 18, but a death certificate changes that. Claire was stunned. She hadn't known about the existence of the fund her father had set up for his grandson. That's not all. The $1 million life insurance payout for your son has already been received. Julian Davenport was listed as the beneficiary. Life insurance? When was that done? It appears to have been taken out shortly after your marriage. Your signature is there too, but handwriting analysis might be necessary. Claire tried to remember documents she didn't recall signing. In the early days of their marriage, Julian had asked her to sign many legal documents. Life insurance papers might have been included among them. There's an even more serious discovery, the detective continued. There's evidence that Julian Davenport was also investigating your inheritance. Detailed research materials about the Beaumont family fortune were found in his office. My inheritance?
Yes.
There are records of him consulting with multiple lawyers about inheritance in case of your divorce or death. With your son's death, you would be the next heir, and if something happened to you, he, as your spouse, would inherit everything. Claire was horrified. Julian's plan wasn't just about their son's trust fund or insurance money, but aimed at her family's entire fortune. And probably, ultimately, her own life might be in danger too. Mrs. Davenport, I recommend contacting the police immediately. This isn't simply a kidnapping case, it's an organized fraud case. Claire took out her cell phone with trembling hands. Finally, the entire truth had been revealed. The man she had thought was her loving husband was actually a cold-blooded criminal. He had taken their son away, deceived her, and targeted the family fortune. However, the most important thing was that Leo was alive. Her son had returned, and this time, no one would take him away. Claire immediately contacted the police. FBI agent Carter took charge of the case, and Leo's DNA testing was conducted. The results were clear. The 8-year-old boy before them was definitely Leo Davenport himself. Mrs. Davenport, this is an interstate kidnapping case and, simultaneously, a large-scale financial fraud case, Agent Carter explained. We will arrest your husband, Julian Davenport, and Sophia Miller immediately. 2 days later, Julian was arrested at Austin Airport in Texas. Sophia Miller was also detained at the same time. When the footage of Julian being handcuffed was broadcast on the news, Claire watched it with her son. Mama, won't Papa come back anymore? Leo looked up at his mother anxiously. For an 8-year-old child, understanding the complexity of the adult world was difficult. Papa did bad things, so he'll be in a special place for a while. But you're safe now. Mama will always be with you, Claire gently explained while holding her son. The trial was held 6 months later. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: Julian's bank records, evidence of bigamy in Texas, illegal withdrawals from their son's trust fund, and receipt of fraudulently obtained life insurance money. Furthermore, Sophia Miller was also prosecuted as an accomplice. When Claire faced Julian again in court, she couldn't find any trace of her former husband in him. There was no color of regret in his eyes, but rather only irritation that his plan had been exposed. "You never loved our son at all, did you?" Claire stated this quietly from the witness stand. "Both Leo and I were nothing more than tools for you to obtain money. But you didn't understand that love can never be bought with money." The verdict was as harsh as expected. Julian Davenport received a 20-year prison sentence for kidnapping, fraud, and bigamy. Sophia Miller received a 5-year sentence as an accomplice. Claire immediately began divorce proceedings. With the help of an excellent legal team, she was able to protect all her assets. The illegally withdrawn funds from her son's trust fund were fully recovered, and she received formal apologies and compensation from the life insurance company. "Mama, what are we going to do from now on?" Leo asked his mother in the living room of their new home. Claire had purchased a smaller but warmer house near her father's company. "We're going to start a new life, Leo. This time as a real family." Claire smiled while taking her son's hand. "Let's find things you like and do what you want to do." Mom is planning to start something new too. Claire had decided to establish a non-profit organization to support women in similar situations. She wanted to use her experience to help victims of domestic fraud and child kidnapping. Leo transferred to a local elementary school and gradually returned to a normal life while receiving counseling. The memories of his 2 years in Texas were complex for him, but surrounded by his mother's love, his emotional wounds gradually healed. One evening, mother and son visited the Hilltop Cemetery together. Leo's small headstone had already been removed. In its place, a small memorial bench had been placed. "Mama, you thought about me here all this time, didn't you?" "Yes, every day. Every day I continued loving you. I thought about Mama all the time when I was in Texas too. I could never forget my real Mama's love." The two sat on the bench and watched the Atlantic sunset. "Leo, Mama learned one important thing," Claire said, placing her hand on her son's shoulder. "A real family isn't made only of blood relations. It's bound together by hearts that continue loving each other, no matter what difficulties arise, no matter how far apart we are." Leo looked up at his mother and smiled. "I think so too. We're a real family, aren't we?" "Yes, and we'll always be together from now on." As the sun set into the ocean, mother and son walked home hand in hand. The long nightmare was over, and real life was about to begin. The strength of a mother who had risen from the sadness of losing her loved one, discovered the truth, and achieved justice became a new light of hope, illuminating their future.